All right. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Good. How are you, Reggie?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Thank you for joining me today. As you
Honored to be
know,
here.
yeah, we serve together on Cincinnati City Council. And another part of my life, I'm a senior fellow at the Children's Funding Project, in large part thanks to you and connect me with this organization.
Just
And
made an introduction, but I'm so glad you're there. I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it. For those who do not know about the Children's Funding Project, there will be a link at the end of this recording and in the transcript to find out more. But in essence, the Children's Funding Project helps state and local governments find sustainable public revenue sources to serve children and youth in all capacities. And that brings me to my very dear friend, Greg Landsman, and his work in Cincinnati, Ohio, with starting the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. So, Greg, I just would love for you to start off by just sharing what is Cincinnati Preschool Promise?
So the Preschool Promise is a program that's now up and running. It was a ballot measure that passed in 2016. It provides 2 years of quality preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds in the city of Cincinnati, making Cincinnati one of the first cities in the country to do that. And it does a couple of things. It provides tuition assistance to help families who couldn't otherwise afford high quality preschool. So whatever they can pay, the Preschool Promise comes in and pays the rest. And then it helps with quality improvement grants that go directly to providers to help them with all of these things that are important to get to quality. Ohio has a state quality rating system, and you want to get the highest level of quality, which is 5 stars. And a lot of times that means being able to buy better curriculum, being able to have the right, furniture in your classroom, the right toys and other things that kids are going to interact with, and training, you name it. The quality improvement grants help with that. And then the third piece is it helps with wage assistance to improve the wages of early childhood educators, because that happens to be the hardest thing that a lot of these providers are dealing with, even before the pandemic. Post-pandemic, it's even worse, but just getting really qualified early childhood educators into classrooms and into these neighborhoods where a lot of times, folks don't want to be, even though that's where they're needed the most. So it does those 3 things: tuition assistance, quality improvement grants, and wage assistance, all to help build a preschool system where every kid has access to really high quality preschool.
I really always love hearing you talk about Preschool Promise because there's a way that you animate the work and make it exciting. But I also imagine that some of the goals, or if not all of the goals of Preschool Promise, could have been achieved through philanthropic channels. So why was it important to you, or what's the significance of it being like a voter-approved fund, that's something that's on the ballot versus other means or routes?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we had been funding as a community, we in Cincinnati had been investing a lot of private philanthropic United Way raised money into preschool, and it really made a big difference in terms of proving locally that this worked. Right? It wasn't just that we were investing in preschool and these providers and helping parents who otherwise couldn't afford it to afford quality preschool. We were only helping a fraction of the families who really need help. Almost every family needs help. It's very expensive. And we also invested in a data system to prove that if a kid has 2 years of quality preschool, they show up to preschool prepared. And there's an assessment, and that readiness assessment really makes a big difference in terms of whether or not that child is going to do well as a student in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. These are the kids that are reading by the end of third grade. And so that early data showed that if you're ready for kindergarten, you were 85% of those kids were reading successfully by the end of third grade versus 42% who were reading successfully that weren't ready. So it's like, it is such a huge moment of truth, the school readiness. And so the philanthropic dollars helped us secure long-term sustainable funding, the public funding, where voters said, no, 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 we want this we want our tax dollars to go to children. I remember the night of the election, I was working in a polling location, and right towards the end, I was like, oh, is this going to pass? I was starting to get nervous because it was so much was riding on this ballot measure. And this woman came up and she said, I'm a very conservative voter. I almost never vote for these levies, but I like when my tax dollars go to children, and this goes directly.
Oh, that's powerful.
And so it was really amazing. And so it ended up passing with 63% of the vote, one of the I think the largest margin of victories in any school levy here, because I think when given the choice, voters will say, no, no, if this is going to help children and make a big difference, then yeah, I'm all for it. And so now, every year, $15 million, gets invested in preschool into the lives of these children. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of children and families every year. It's really powerful.
And it was a great campaign. So Greg, it was on the ballot in 2016. So November of 2016. I moved to Cincinnati in July of 2015. So I had been here just over a year, and I just remember the diversity of people I saw working on the campaign, right? Like it was like age in our city, geographic diversity, right? Representing East Side, West Side, racial demographics. And so part of that, I mean, it was clear that was intentional. And this is a little bit of a detour, but this was your baby, this was your brainchild. Talk to me a little bit about the intentionality around the diversity of folks working on this initiative and why that was important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think the answer is that, one, the city is a very diverse city. I mean, we're ostensibly half white, half black. I mean, we have a growing Hispanic community. So anything that we do should represent the diversity of the city, period, right? That's just something I believe in. However, it's also really beneficial to something if there's full ownership. If everyone feels like, hey, this is something that I am a part of and that I can see myself in it and that I helped build it. So we, went out and built leadership teams, committees that had the diversity that our city has. And we were really intentional about having them push and prod on the plan. So it wasn't just like, hey, sign up, you believe in preschool, we believe in preschool, let's all do this together. It was, okay, here's the plan as it stands today, and we want you to weigh in. We want it to work for you and for your family and for your community. And so it just kept getting better and better and better. And there were folks and there were times when I got frustrated. It was like, oh my God, this is not what we envisioned. But it became, and that's not easy when something starts to change and you're not entirely sure if the changes are the right ones. But in the end, I think all of the updates and improvements that were made to the plan made it much better. And I think that's, there's obviously a political benefit to having a big coalition. Like thousands and thousands of people went to the ballot together. It wasn't just me or a small group of people. It was a horde of folks. I mean, hundreds of organizations. But it also was that the plan, the program itself was built by all of these incredible people, particularly parents and preschool providers, and that made it better. And we're worthy of someone's vote.
I don't know if you know this, well, you probably do. Billy has probably taught you about this, but our mutual friend Billy Thomas, who's just like an all around like cool guy. Like he's the definition of cool. Like whenever he like walks down the street, you're like, you can hear like cool music playing in the background, yeah. Right? And is just doing really great, interesting stuff in Cincinnati. And he talks about his time on Preschool Promise and like what he learned about the city in that process. And so I think that that's like a really great example of how a very specific, focused process helps sort of train up and gives a sense of understanding to folks who then go out into the community and do, you know, other like, you know, really cool things. So I wanted to pivot and talk about, and correct me if I'm not getting the name correctly, but it's the Children's and Families Cabinet that you assembled. And so tell me about the cabinet and the cabinet's relationship to Preschool Promise.
So one of the things that happened during the Preschool Promise exploratory phase was a few of us went out to Denver. The idea of a program like this started when I don't know, 50 leaders from Cincinnati went to Denver. We were there on a leadership exchange, and I had the opportunity to, you know, to meet Governor Hickenlooper, then Governor Hickenlooper. Wait, is he governor?
He was at the time.
He was at the time. Now he's a United States Senator.
Yeah.
Sorry. Gosh.
And the Hickenloopers are a Cincinnati family.
And they're a Cincinnati family. Anyways, he said, as he was speaking to us, you know, one of the most important things I did as mayor when he was mayor of Denver was this preschool deal. And I remember being like, wow, I mean, you know, he's known for doing a ton as mayor. So I was pretty struck by that, and, you know, had this conversation with him afterwards. And he gave me two pieces of advice. One was like, we did 1 year, you should do 2 years. And then two, he said, just make sure you build this with the community so that when you go to the ballot, it's not just you, it's, you know, this whole community. In any event, we went to Denver on a trip. It was Dr. Vanessa White, who you know very, very well. Yeah. She was a school board member, just this incredible community leader and organizer. She and I and a few others went to Denver. And one of the things we learned a lot about their preschool program that helped us as we were building ours, but we also learned about this other effort that they were doing, which was a Children and Families Cabinet, where they had, you know, an entire organization within city government focused on doing a whole host of things to make life infinitely better for children and families, particularly those most marginalized. And so when I was first elected to city council and Dr. Vanessa White joined me as my chief of staff, this was one of the things we wanted to also do, which was stand up a Office of Children and Families and a cabinet in Cincinnati, which we've done. And it's now a cabinet that includes folks from all of these different sectors, from the school district, from the housing authority, from the hospitals, particularly Children's Hospital, all of these folks who, if they work better together, will get better outcomes for children. And now there is a staff person within the administration, Virginia Talent, who spends some time on this. And ultimately, we hope to have a full-time person who's doing you know, all of this work within the administration that otherwise wouldn't get done. So I'll give one example. We want to get rid of all of the, you know, the dangerous lead in the city. We want to be one of the first, you know, lead safe cities in the country. And, you know, we're going to do that in the next 5 years as it relates to the lead and water. We're going to replace all of our water pipes, right? So that's great. So the pipes, the water, all that's going to get done in the next couple of years. It's a big deal. So the question then becomes, what about the lead paint? And we know based on data that there's you know, there are a bunch of homes or housing projects that send, you know, the majority of the kids to the doctor with acute lead poisoning or some level of lead poisoning. And what would it look like if we tackled that as a community, not just the health department, which is where we are now. And so what I think you're going to see over the course of the next year or two is like a massive strategy that involves all of these people, landlords, the housing authority, the Children's Hospital folks, many others, really just digging in, no pun intended, because a lot of it's in the soil,
Right.
to, make Cincinnati completely lead safe for kids.
So, so what I'm hearing is this. So Preschool Promise has this charge of ensuring that our kids are ready for kindergarten, because the data tells us when the child arrives ready for kindergarten, that they have these outcomes, and their trajectory is just, in a very strong trajectory. And the Children and Families Cabinet says, now, we've tackled that and we're supporting this. What are all of the environmental, social, economic factors that are impacting children and youth, and how do we, leverage the power of City Hall and all of the public-private sector to think strategically about children and youth?
Yeah, and Elizabeth Gaines, who runs the Children's Funding Project, a wonderful leader, you all have helped other communities do similar, set up similar cabinets, similar offices for children and families. And there's a great graphic that Elizabeth uses where it's got this sort of pipe, and it's all of the things that happen in a kid's life, these systems and programs, things that kids experience, and how do you insulate that pipe by getting all of these pieces to work together to make sure that kids are as healthy and successful as humanly possible. And that's really, I think, a powerful image and what we're trying to do here. And Elizabeth and the Children's Funding Project helped to really get us up, up and running. But yeah, I mean, if you think about a child's life, my wife and I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And so, what happened prenatally, and the fact that, Sarah, my wife, had, access to really high quality prenatal care, and she had the transportation to get there. That led to 2 children who literally arrived on their due dates, like right on time. They both arrived when they were supposed to, and they were healthy births, healthy birth weights. That makes a huge difference. And so what are we doing as a community to make sure every single mom has access to high quality prenatal care? And then afterwards, we were able to, afford high quality childcare, ultimately preschool, but as a city, and we've done the preschool piece, but now, how do we make sure everyone can afford high quality childcare? We've started to make some investments in that area that we haven't before. That's good, but it's not where we need to be. And then housing, how do you make sure that every kid has really safe housing and it's healthy? It's a healthy place, right? Like, we have some properties that are still sending a lot of kids to the emergency room because of, terrible upper respiratory issues because of these sewer backups and mold. And, and that takes kids out of school. I mean, it's terrible for their health, but also for their education, wages, all of these things go into whether or not, children are going to be thriving. And, I want to be in a city and help lead in a city where every kid, particularly those who've struggled, are doing incredibly well because all of the adults got organized and just worked way smarter together.
Yeah, I started smiling because I was thinking about one of the funny stories you tell about your son that stick with me. Well, listen, Greg, I really appreciate you taking the time. And as I said earlier, the purpose of this series is to really show various examples of voter-approved funds that have gone on the ballot, have been successful, and no two fund is the same. Communities are different, and so to get an insight into the process and how it could work. And for folks who are interested, you can go to the website for Children's Funding Project. It'll be linked at the end of this video. We'll also have a link to the image that Greg brought up about the pipeline of children's services as well. And if there are any further questions, Children's Funding Project, we are here to answer your questions and just to help support you in supporting children and youth. So with that, my friend, I'm going to give you some time back and appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.